My name is Evelyn Grant, 62 years old, retired florist, mother of one beautiful daughter who, until last week, used to call me her best friend. Now she calls me something else, the woman who ruined her wedding. I suppose there are crueler titles in the world, but none, I think, that sting quite like that one. I spent 40 years arranging flowers for other people's happiest days. I knew exactly how many lilies it took to say a fresh start, and how many carnations to whisper patience. When Lila announced her engagement to Max Danvers, I didn't just want to make her bouquet. I wanted to make the whole ceremony breathe. "You've earned the right to enjoy it," my friend Tessa said. "Let the professionals handle it." But what do you tell a gardener who's handed someone else the shears? The first bruise bloomed during the rehearsal dinner. The hotel ballroom was dripping with rented glamour. Cold white orchids, polished marble floors, chairs wrapped in linen like bandaged hopes. I had brought a small arrangement for the welcome table, blush roses and freesia, Lila's childhood favorites. She saw me setting them down and hissed in that whisper people craft to wound politely. "Mom, those don't match the palette." "The palette?" I smiled. I thought love matched everything. She didn't smile back. "Please put them away. Max's planner has a look going on. A look." The girl who once braided daisy chains for her dolls was now curating looks. I lifted the vase, felt the water slosh against my palm, and said softly, "As you wish, sweetheart." But Tessa saw my face when I turned. She mouthed, "She'll realize later." Later arrived the next morning and brought more orders. "Mum, could you please not wear mauve on the day?" Lila asked during hair trials. "It photographs warm, and we're keeping a cool tone." I looked at the fabric I'd chosen weeks ago, stitched by my own, trembling hands to save money. I thought pale mauve was soft. "It's dated," she said quickly. "Pastel green would be better. I can send a stylist." I wanted to argue. Instead, I smoothed the dress and nodded. Mothers learn early that peace can be bought with silence. When she left, Tessa muttered, "Sometimes we raise them too well. They think we'll never drop the tray even when the plates break." I laughed, but the sound tasted bitter. That night I stayed up steaming the very mauve dress she'd condemned. Beside it lay the invitation suite, embossed, expensive, perfection that smelled faintly of someone else's ownership. I remembered when George, my late husband, scribbled our vows on the back of a grocery list and folded it into my palm. He never once worried about color palettes. The next morning, wedding day -2, Lila exploded over the flower budget. Max's planner had overspent. I flagged it gently, offering suggestions to reuse decor between events. She snapped, "Mom, please! You're retired, not the designer. Just let us handle it." I bit my lip. In my mind, I could hear George's voice. "It's her day, Evie. Let her have it." So I let her have everything. The evening before the ceremony, I drove to the venue to deliver a crate of emergency supplies: floral tape, pins, blush powder, snacks for the bridesmaids. When I reached the back door, a young staffer stopped me. "Vendor's entrance is around the side, ma'am," he said. "I'm not a vendor. I'm the mother of the bride." He looked embarrassed, stepped aside quickly, but the damage was done. For the rest of the night I carried that label: vendor of emotion, supplier of usefulness. Through the kitchen corridor, I caught a glimpse of Lila trying on her gown, bright as a frost crystal, surrounded by cameras. She didn't see me. Maybe that was mercy. Later, when she called that midnight, her voice trembled wase. At the sharp edge that only family can wield. "Mom, I don't know what possessed you to bring those cheap tablecloths. Max said the planner almost cried. I brought them as backups, I said. Your planner forgot the linens for the dessert tables. Well, now everything looks uneven. You've ruined half the setup. Ruined. That word landed like a knife I had previously used to cut cake. I closed my eyes and breathed. I'm sorry you feel that way, darling. I was only trying to help. Please don't do anything else. Just show up and sit quietly. All right, I whispered. Quiet I can do. She hung up. I sat in the car a long time watching the venue lights glow through the trees, as if they'd already decided who belonged inside. Back home, I took out the box George and I kept for rainy days. Receipts, saving certificates, and the check from the sale of my floral shop. Every petal of our retirement pressed flat on paper. I traced the numbers, the ink slightly faded but the meaning clear. If only she knew, I thought. If only she knew whose hands paid for each sparkle she takes for granted. In that moment, hurt turned into something cooler and steadier than rage. Clarity. I whispered to George's photo on the dresser. She'll find out, my love. Not because I'll tell her, because truth blooms even in rooms without light. And I slept, finally, without dreaming of mauve. Morning came wrapped in silver fog. I stood at the hotel window, watching the valet boys polish cars that weren't mine, and thought, this is what invisibility sounds like. Engines humming for someone else's happiness. I dressed carefully. Not in the pastel green her stylist sent over, but in the same pale mauve she called dated. It was the color George had once said made my eyes look kind. If I couldn't belong to her theme, I could at least belong to my memories. Tessa arrived to drive me to the venue. She eyed my dress and grinned. You went rebellious. Subtly, I replied. If protest had a flower, it would be lilac, soft, but it grows through concrete. Kide. The venue was already humming like a hive. Photographers everywhere, assistants trailing cables, waiters moving like silent punctuation marks between sentences of chaos. When I reached the bridal suite, a woman with a clipboard gave me the slow up and down. Relatives are supposed to wait in the lounge. I'm the mother of the bride, I said. She frowned, checked a list. Evelyn Grant. Oh, Mrs. Grant, we didn't expect you so early. The florist is finishing arrangements. I almost corrected her. Retired florist. But stopped. I've learned that proving who you are to strangers is the heaviest kind of luggage. Through an open door, I saw Lila having her makeup done. Layers of pearl shimmer transformed my strawberry-freckled baby into something otherworldly. She caught my reflection in the mirror. Her mouth tightened. Mom, please tell me you didn't wear mauve. I did, I said simply. It's soft. It clashes with the bridesmaids. Then I suppose no one will mistake me for one. The makeup artist glanced nervously between us. Lila sighed. Whatever, just... Please, stay away from the front rows during the photos. I'll be where I need to be, I said. There is an art to being silent without disappearing. I perfected it that day. When the ceremony began, I sat 3 rows from the back. Everyone stood as Lila and Max walked down the aisle, glowing in all the right places. The violinist played the melody I suggested months ago, one of the few ideas she hadn't vetoed because she thought the planner picked it. I smiled. Little victories count even when nobody knows you won. Throughout the vows, I kept my eyes on her face. I didn't hear the words. I heard the years, spelling drills, scraped knees, first sleepover, first heartbreak. Every promise she made, I'd once echoed to her as comfort. It felt odd watching her pledge to honor someone else when she'd forgotten how to honor where she came from. When the applause erupted, I clapped too, quietly, like a parent at a recital where the solo goes to someone else. And when they kissed, I prayed not for blessing, but for wisdom. She would need it more. The reception unfolded as predictably as a magazine spread. Crystal stemware, muted jazz, laughter timed to the flash of cameras. I stood near the pastry table, the invisible supervisor, making sure the caterers didn't trip over loose cables. Old habits die with dignity. At one point, an elderly guest approached me. "You must be from the event staff, dear," she said kindly. I nodded. Something like that. Hours passed. No one asked me to dance. That was fine. I preferred solid ground. I looked at the floral arch. Hundreds of white orchids, the same kind she'd scolded me for suggesting weeks earlier. Irony has a sense of humor, even in expensive venues. Tessa slipped beside me later with a glass of sparkling water. "Still alive?" "Emotionally winded," I said, "but upright." She leaned in. "I heard her tell someone she designed this whole thing herself." I chuckled softly. People who buy beauty often forget who made it. Dinner came and went in waves of applause for speeches that forgot my name. I wasn't on the program, not even for a token toast. That hurt more than I expected. George's absence had already carved a hollow in every milestone. Now Lila's silence filled it perfectly. When cake cutting began, I helped direct a few servers backstage, then stepped out onto the terrace for air. The night was crisp, full of fairy lights pretending to be stars. From inside came laughter, her laughter, bright and careless, unburdened by awareness. I watched her through the glass doors, holding Max's hand, spinning in a circle of admiration. She looked happy. That should have been enough for me. And maybe, somewhere beneath the fatigue, it was. Tessa joined me. "Are you going?" "And to tell her?" "Tell her what?" "That you paid for this circus." I smiled at the garden below, covered in petals no one would sweep tonight. "When the music stops," I said. "Truth doesn't need an invitation to the party." "You're too saintly," Tessa muttered. "Saints pray for miracles," I said. "Mothers wait for them." When I returned inside, Lila was posing under the chandelier. "It's stunning," a guest said. "Yes," Lila replied. "Dad's insurance finally did something good." I froze, the words an icicle sliding down my spine. Insurance. Half right, half wrong. George's policy had covered medical bills, nothing more. The rest, the venue deposit, the flowers, the planner's retainer, came from the sale of my store. From every dawn I'd spent arranging bridal bouquets while my fingers cracked from cold water. I stepped away before resentment could find my face. Invisibility had its uses. It let you watch others misrepresent the truth without turning into the villain who corrects them in public. After the guests left and the couple departed in a rain of petals I paid for, I walked through the empty hall. The floors were sticky with champagne, the air heavy with wilted orchids. I gathered a few loose blossoms from the carpet, rescued orphans, and took them home. Old reflexes again, picking broken things that no one else wanted. Back at my kitchen table, I placed the blooms in a jar. Pale, fragile, still fragrant. I wrote in my journal, "Silence isn't consent, it's incubation. Someday, truth will bloom out loud." Then I wrote the amount I had spent on her wedding. 6 figures. Savings of 2 lives, condensed into one night of applause that forgot my name. I placed the receipt beside George's photo and whispered, "She thinks insurance bought love, but you and I know who paid the premium." The Monday after the wedding felt quieter than it should have. No leftover music. No thank you call. Just dust settling on a weekend that had used me up and forgotten to say goodbye. I spent the morning cleaning the cottage, polishing what no one had noticed, because that's what mothers do when their hearts are sore. They rearrange the evidence. The kitchen smelled of lemon oil. Outside, rain tapped against the window, impatient and rhythmic. The sound reminded me of the dripping in my old shop sink, the noise that had kept me company through decades of bouquets and heartbreaks. For the first time in a long time, I didn't resent it. Rain, like truth, has impeccable timing. It arrives exactly when you're ready to get wet. Tessa called around noon. She post anything about the wedding? I glanced at my phone screen glowing with curated joy. Lila and Max on a beach, captions full of hashtags and gratitude. Not once did it mention the woman holding a bouquet in every picture, but never actually in the frame. She thanked the planner, I said, and the venue, and the universe. That's probably me, just renamed. Tessa snorted. You can sue the universe for plagiarism. Not necessary, I said. I'm starting a new partnership with it instead. After we hung up, I opened my old business ledger. Handwritten numbers danced like ghosts of ambition. Revenue columns, shipping notes, invoices signed by brides who'd promised to recommend me and sometimes forgot. The last page held the record of the shop sale. Every penny I'd used to fund the wedding. I traced the decimal point with my pen. So many zeros. So much silence. I decided to print the receipts. Venue fees, catering deposits, dressmaker invoices, all bearing my name. I wanted to see the evidence laid out, row after row, a garden of sacrifice finally catalogued. When I was done, the table looked like an altar. Later that week, I took the folder to Mr. Henderson, the accountant who'd helped with the shop closing years ago. He looked up over his glasses, half smiling. Mrs. Grant, still keeping perfect chords, I see. Force of habit, I said. I need everything certified. Expenses for my daughter's wedding, all paid from my account. He blinked. Are you making a claim? No, just an archive. He shrugged, stamped the pages, added his signature sheet. When he handed them back, he said, Planning another event? Something like that, I replied. A quiet one. Fewer guests, bigger meaning. That evening, I brewed tea and called Tessa again. Do you remember that youth centre they tried to open 2 years ago? I asked. They lost funding. The one near Willow Street? She said. What about it? I was thinking George would have liked that name on a wall. The Grant Community Garden. Turn the rest of the wedding budget into scholarships for kids who still believe flowers matter. Tessa exhaled, impressed. You're turning heartbreak into photosynthesis. It's what florists do, I said. When the honeymoon ended, Lila finally called. Her voice was all sunlight. Mom, we're back. You won't believe how beautiful Bali was. I'm sure, I said, keeping my tone soft. There's one thing, though, she continued. The venue sent us a notice. Some confusion about final payments. Could you check if the insurance covered everything? They say the owner's check cleared only half. Owners? I asked. What name? Yours, apparently. Funny, right? Probably a mistake. I smiled into the receiver. No mistake, darling. I wrote the check. Silence thickened on the line. Wait. What do you mean? I mean every chair you sat on, every orchid in your photos, it all came from my account. That can't be true. she said quickly. Max said. Max assumed. I interrupted gently, because I stayed quiet long enough for assumptions to bloom. Mom, why didn't you say something? Because love doesn't email invoices, I said. But sometimes, for the sake of memory, it keeps a receipt. Her breathing changed. Disbelief began to crumble into something softer, heavier. I don't know what to say. Maybe thank you, I suggested. But not to me, to George. He'd have wanted you to stand in a place paid for by love, not insurance. She whispered. Mom, I treated you terribly. I know, I said. But grace costs nothing. I can afford it. We ended the call there. No apologies yet, just comprehension wobbling into existence. That night, I mailed copies of the certified documents to the council handling the youth center project. A note attached read, For the children who will grow something beautiful out of their mistakes, from Evelyn and George Grant. And below that, I added in smaller handwriting, in memory of all the bouquets given freely and forgotten. I sealed the envelope and felt lighter instantly. 2 days later, the local paper called to confirm the donation. We'd love to feature you in a community thank you piece, the journalist said. This is a remarkable contribution, from a private citizen no less. I laughed softly. No articles, please. Tell them a florist just planted one last garden. In my journal that night I wrote, Love misunderstood itself again today, but at least it read the fine print. Quiet generosity may seem invisible, but eventually someone turns on the light. Then I pinned one of the leftover orchids from the wedding between the pages and whispered to it, Your beauty paid for your own freedom. 2 weeks later, the council sent a simple envelope, thin as a promise. Inside was a 30-word thank you letter and a penciled map to the empty lot they intended to transform into the Grant Community Garden. It wasn't glossy or ceremonial, just paper that smelled faintly of printer ink. Still, when I unfolded it on my kitchen table, it felt heavy as grace. Tessa arrived that morning carrying donuts and skepticism. You really did it, she said, dropping the box beside the letter. You turned your silence into zoning paperwork. I did, I said, smiling. And if all goes well, something will bloom out of our tax bracket. When we visited the site, the space looked like the afterthought of a city. Patchy soil, discarded bottles, one stubborn tree leaning at the edge as if trying to listen better. But I could already see it. Rows of marigolds, a path of lavender, benches carved from reclaimed wood. A place where hands could rest without explaining themselves. A young man in a council vest approached us. Mrs. Grant, I'm Eli Trent, coordinator for the project. He motioned toward the dirt lot. It'll take work, but with your donation, we can start immediately. And if you're willing, we'd like you to head the volunteer committee. I'd like that, I said. The wind lifted a stray page from my notebook and carried it a few feet before dropping it at Eli's boots. He picked it up, read the faint cursive quote across the top, George's favorite. Beauty is practicality, wearing its Sunday clothes. He smiled. That's good. May I put it on the signboard when we open? Please do, I said. He'd have loved that. Within days, volunteers arrived. Retirees eager for purpose, schoolchildren clutching packets of seeds, 2 mechanics who wanted to build planters from old tires. Each hole they dug felt like punctuation in a sentence I'd been trying to finish since George died. The air filled with chatter and soil dust. For once, my experience as a florist earned admiration instead of dismissal. Mrs. Grant, how deep for tulips? Just enough to surprise them, I said, and they laughed, not knowing I was half serious. During the second week, Lila called again. Her voice carried a gentler edge. "I read about the project," she said. "Everyone's saying wonderful things." "So you did see an article," I teased. "I thought I asked the reporter for anonymity." "You did, but apparently anonymity is newsworthy, ne?" "Oh, Mom, why did you use the wedding money for this?" "Because beauty should feed more than appetite, darling." She hesitated. "I don't know if I can explain to Max. He already feels guilty." "Then don't explain. Plant something instead. Come see it." She said she'd try. Mornings in the garden became rhythmic. I'd arrive first, unlock the gate, listen to sparrows scold us for being late. Planting tools glinted like truth in sunlight. Eli once told me, "You dig with the confidence of someone burying regret." "I am," I said. Word spread. Local cafes donated compost. The high school sent art students to paint murals on the surrounding wall, portraits of hands exchanging flowers. People began calling the place Haven, dropping the grant out of modesty and affection. I let it happen. Possession had never interested me. Legacy had. One Saturday, while supervising the muralists, I saw a familiar car pull up. Lila stepped out in jeans and sneakers, hair tied back, eyes uncertain. For a second, she looked 12 again, the age when she still believed daisies could mend anything. She walked toward me, holding a single potted rose. I wasn't sure what to bring. "Roses work everywhere," I said, taking it from her hands. "It's a hybrid," she added quickly, old pride surfacing. "Low maintenance, long bloom." "Like its donor, then," I said, half joking. She smiled, small but real. I showed her around, introducing volunteers who all knew her last name by now. She listened, asked questions, even knelt to help a child pat down soil around new saplings. Watching her, I felt a knot inside me loosen. When we reached the far edge of the lot, she stopped. "This place, it feels peaceful." "That's what happens when you remove centerpieces and add purpose," I replied. She looked at me. "Mom, I don't deserve your kindness." "This isn't kindness," I told her softly. "It's maintenance. Families are gardens too. They just need replanting now and then." That evening we shared lemonade on the benches under the leaning tree. Lila said, "I keep thinking about the wedding, how I spoke to you." "You were nervous," I said. "Brides panic about everything except gratitude. But you still showed up." "I always will. Even weeds deserve sunshine once in a while." She laughed through tears. "You and your metaphors. Occupational hazard." Before she left, she reached into her bag and handed me an envelope. "I sold some brand consulting stock," she said. "It isn't much. I want to contribute. Properly this time." I opened it. A modest check, but heavy with significance. "Welcome to the committee, Mrs. Danvers," I said formally. Her grin could have grown a garden by itself. When I returned home later, I found the house too quiet again. But different quiet this time, the restful kind. On the windowsill, the orchid from the wedding still held one surviving petal. I whispered, "You see? She's learning photosynthesis." I wrote in my journal. Today she placed her palm in the dirt beside mine. Maybe this is what forgiveness feels like. Not words, but identical handprints. By the next month, the garden's progress drew media interest again, forcing me to give a brief interview. "What do you hope people learn from this?" the reporter asked. "That beauty was never the privilege of the rich," I said. "It's the consequence of care." The ribbon-cutting ceremony was set for autumn, a quiet event, open to everyone. I requested no floral arch, just a row of planters blooming with the same blush roses Lila used in her bouquet. When Eli installed the final sign, he asked, "Would you like us to include dedicated by Evelyn Grant at the bottom?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "Just write, dedicated with gratitude. If I do this right, they'll know who to thank without seeing the name." He nodded. "That's the florist in you, leaving beauty and letting people wonder where it came from." I smiled. "Exactly. I used to believe that once truth has bloomed, gossip would lose its roots. Turns out, weeds adapt faster than any flower." 2 weeks before the ribbon cutting, a headline appeared online. "Local bride's family garden, funded by father's old insurance policy." I saw it while sipping my morning tea. My heart sank, not out of anger, but tired déjà vu. Some reporter had twisted half facts into a convenient fairy tale. Money from her late father's payout. Hero daughter donating. Community praising. I wasn't even mentioned, which was exactly why it hurt. Tessa stormed in minutes later, holding her phone like a weapon. "Do you see this nonsense? They rewrote history again." I smiled, although my hands were trembling. "Let them. Tomorrow's rain will erase today's footprints." "Evelyn, they're using your husband's name for clicks." "I know, but George never minded being useful." Still, the wound was fresh. After months of humble healing, I was back to being an invisible benefactor in someone else's celebration. By noon, the story had reached Lila. She called, voice tight. "Mom, I swear I didn't talk to that blogger. Max's mother mentioned the project at her bridge club. I think someone overheard." "That's how legends begin, by accident," I said lightly. "Don't worry, dear." "I am worried. Everyone's congratulating me like I single-handedly saved the town. It's awful." "You could tell them the truth," I suggested gently. She paused, thinking. "I will. We'll fix it." I whispered, "We will see what truth blooms on its own." The next day, 2 reporters arrived at the garden unexpectedly, cameras swinging at their hips. Eli intercepted them near the gate, but they spotted me kneeling by the marigolds. "Mrs. Grant, you're George Grant's widow, correct?" "Yes." "Can we get a photo of you in front of the sign your daughter funded?" I stood, wiped soil from my palms. "She donna." "Ted a lot more patience than money," I said. "But I prefer no photographs." They took one anyway. Some truths need no consent. Some cameras pretend kindness. By evening, the photo was online. Me in my gardening apron, captioned, "Mother continues husband's charitable legacy." Pretty. Wrong. Recycled humility packaged as heritage. When Lila arrived at my door that night, guilt preceded her. "Mom, this is spiraling. I'm so sorry. I tried correcting them. They said readers like family stories and that specifics would complicate the narrative." I laughed softly. Facts always do. "Should we make an announcement? A post? Something dramatic?" "No, we plant deeper roots instead." "But you look upset." "Of course I am." I set down my teacup. Not because they forgot my name, because they forgot the lesson. Beauty isn't hereditary. She blinked slowly, processing. "I'll speak during the opening ceremony," she said. "I want people to hear it from me." The ribbon-cutting day arrived bright and crisp. The garden vibrated with colour. Roses awake early, marigolds grinning, lavender perfuming the air like hope. Dozens gathered. Council members, neighbours, volunteers, even a few unfamiliar paparazzi scenting sentiment. Eli handed me the scissors. Would you like to do the honor? Before I could answer, Lila stepped forward. May I say something first? The crowd hushed. She walked to the microphone, nervous but steady. This project exists because of my mother, not because of insurance or fortunes or public names, because she sold her life's work so others could find theirs. I spent months pretending I built a wedding from nothing. She built this garden from grace. So please, if you mention any grant, make sure it's Evelyn. Applause rose, sharp, honest, healing. I felt heat build behind my eyes and let a few tears escape. When she embraced me on stage, the reporters clicked their shutters again. For once, an accurate picture. Later, after the crowd thinned, Max joined us by the gate, shoulders heavier than his tailored suit. Mrs. Grant, he said, you were right about everything. I was too worried about image. I forgot who paid for the frame. A lesson in composition, then, I said. Art needs contrast. He smiled sheepishly. If you'll let us, we'd like to host a fundraiser here every year. Free entry for any mother who's ever been forgotten. That's a strong guest list, I said. Make sure we have enough chairs. By dusk, the press story had changed. New headline: Bride honors mother's hidden gift at community garden opening. I showed it to Tessa. She snorted. Took them long enough. Now you're trending for the right reason. Trending, I said, testing the word like strange fruit. George would have thought that meant wind direction. That night, after everyone left, I stayed in the garden alone. The lights hummed softly, and the bench under the leaning tree gleamed faintly in moonlight. I opened my journal. Today, the old world tried to edit my story, but honesty proofread it. Forgiveness isn't a sentence, it's punctuation. It gives the story room to breathe. When I closed the book, I felt George close the gate behind me in memory, locking nothing out, only sealing what was safe within. Autumn arrived like applause that refused to fade. The marigolds at the Grant Community Garden were fading into rust gold, and new visitors came daily. Students sketching, veterans pruning, couples taking engagement photos beneath the cedar arch. I never imagined the place designed for quiet would become a pilgrimage site for calm. One morning, Eli waved me over with the excitement of someone carrying good news too long. Mrs. Grant, you've been nominated for the city's Heart of the Town award. I nearly dropped my trowel. I don't win things, Eli. I grow them. Well, he said, grinning. This time you grew a reputation. The ceremony was set for November, small and civic, but somehow grand in purpose. Tessa helped me pick a dress, navy blue with tiny embroidered vines, subtle nod to my trade. You'll look like wisdom in heels, she said, tugging a pin into my hair. Wisdom usually wears slippers, I replied. I mean it, Eve. It's time people saw you the way we do. I wasn't sure the world needed to, but recognition, like sunshine, rarely hurts the deserving. The evening of the event, the auditorium shimmered with candlelight and the clink of modest catering trays. The stage backdrop read, "Community starts with one seed." I stood at the edge, heart knocking gently, when the announcer called my name. Lila and Max sat in the second row. Seeing them felt steadier than the podium beneath my hands. The mayor smiled warmly. Mrs. Evelyn Grant reminds us that generosity need not shout. It simply cultivates. He handed me a crystal plaque shaped like an open book. I leaned toward the microphone. Thank you. Floral work taught me two things. First, even weeds have purpose. Second, every petal requires someone willing to hold the thorns. The garden wasn't built from money. It was built from moments of forgiveness that refused to die. If any merit exists in me, It's borrowed from those who loved me even when I wilted. Applause followed, steady, genuine, the kind that fills the lungs instead of the ego. When I stepped down, Lila was crying. Max stood to hug me first. "No planner could have written a better speech," he whispered. "I didn't plan it," I answered. "Flowers taught me improvisation." A week after the ceremony, my story ran again, this time correctly, fact-checked by someone who actually phoned me. The headline read, "From Florist to Founder, Evelyn Grant's Quiet Revolution." It featured the quote about weeds and thorns. People started bringing dates at line to the garden on bookmarks, postcards, even graffiti stencils on the back wall. I didn't mind. Good sentences deserve escape. In December, I received a letter from a nearby college offering an honorary course credit to future horticulture students who interned at the garden. I took it as the universe officially signing off on my life's syllabus. Lila began teaching weekend art classes there, children painting pots, adults learning color harmony. She'd call out to me across the beds, "Mom, what compliments orange marigolds?" "Humility," I'd answer. It became a running joke, a gentle refrain that made students smile even if they didn't understand. One afternoon, Max found me pruning sweet peas. "We're thinking of starting a family," he said quietly. "Lila wanted to tell you herself, but she's nervous." "Children come with their own instructions," I said, "mostly blank pages. Fill them with patience, and they tend to read well." He laughed. "That plaque of yours should hang in the nursery." When they finally told me officially, Lila's eyes were bright, uncertain. "Mom, if we have a girl, her middle name will be Grant, not after the brand, after the lesson." That was the kind of justice courts can't deliver, moral restitution wrapped in lineage. Months passed. Winter curled over the garden like a quilt, frost sketching lace on the benches. I still came every morning, sweeping snow from plaques, feeding the birds. The town installed solar lights so people could walk safely through even in February dusk. One evening, a stranger stopped me at the gate. "Are you Mrs. Grant?" "Yes." "My mother stayed here during a rough patch last summer. She said this place taught her to breathe again. I just wanted to thank you." He handed me a small packet of tulip bulbs. "For spring," he said. I held them close, already imagining new colors in soil we thought was finished. "That's the thing about gardens," I told him. "They never end sentences, only start more paragraphs." At home that night, I wrote in Mekyogawatseena, a journal. Justice isn't punishment, it's propagation. When goodness reproduces itself, the verdict has been reached. I closed the book and looked out at the faint glow from Maple Haven Street. The wind carried laughter, volunteers working late shoveling compost, teenagers flirting over pruning shears. It sounded exactly like the life I'd hoped my daughter would build. Messy, honest, alive. When Lila phoned before bed, she asked, "Mom, are you happy now?" I laughed softly. Happiness is a moving target, darling. But tonight, it stood still long enough for me to wave. Spring returned without asking permission. One morning, I stepped into the garden and found it already awake. Tulips pushing through leftover frost, sparrows arguing in the hedge like old friends, dew marking every leaf with applause. The first thing I did was kneel. Not to weed, not to pray, just to feel the pulse under the soil. Life repeating itself, stubborn and forgiving. That, I think, is grace. Lila arrived later, with her belly rounding softly beneath a lilac dress. "I swear, the baby kicks whenever we drive past here," she said, laughing. Maybe she's gardening already. She's just applauding early, I said. You'll get used to that sound. We walked the paths together, past signs painted by schoolchildren. She stopped where her rosebush stood taller than ever. Do you think Dad would be proud of us? He always preferred evidence to speculation, I said. So yes, these roses are proof. She squeezed my hand. You turned hurt into habitat, Mom. No, love. I just gave hurt something better to do. In May, the city held an open-gate day for the garden. Families picnicked under the tree line. Musicians played soft jazz near the mural wall. Children dipped brushes in buckets to refresh faded petals on paintings. Someone had stenciled my quote about weeds and thorns beneath the benches. Only, now the signature read simply, E.g. Community. I liked that. The plural honesty of it. Tessa wandered over with lemonade. Well, you've done it. Everybody's healed and employed. What's next? Rest, I said, sipping. And maybe a nap. She chuckled. Knowing you, you'll find another lost cause before the weekends. I hope so, I told her. Purpose has terrible separation anxiety. Later that evening, after people drifted home, I sat alone on the bench under the leaning tree. The horizon glowed, that soft citrus tint only April can invent. I opened my journal for what I knew would be the last entry in this particular book. The wind turned the pages to a blank sheet. How considerate, I thought, leaving me a clean start. Grace is not a spotlight. It's the lamp left on, so someone else can find their way in the dark. I used to think love meant paying for everything. Now I know it means planting something you may never see bloom. I gave a wedding, gained a garden, and in between rediscovered myself. I closed the cover gently. There was no tragedy left, only continuity. A few days later, Max placed the final plaque by the entrance. It read, Grant Community Garden, founded in memory of George Grant, sustained by the hands of his family and friends. Underneath, in smaller letters, every seed is forgiveness with potential. When I read it, I smiled at him. Careful. People will expect miracles from our compost. He smiled back. With this soil, I'd believe anything. That evening, the first rain of summer began. I watched from my porch as drops bent the tulips instead of breaking them. Even bowed, they looked regal. Lila texted a photo from the garden gate. I think she's coming early. Save me a bouquet. I replied, already growing one. 2 weeks later, I became a grandmother. Tiny fingers, dark hair, lungs already rehearsing for happiness. They named her Evelyn Rose. When I held her for the first time, she yawned wide enough to swallow whole censure, eyes of miscommunication. The nurse smiled. She looks peaceful. She's inheriting it, I said. Months passed. The garden thrived. The town kept visiting. Sometimes tourists asked me, Are you Mrs. Grant? And I'd answer, Only on paperwork. That always made them laugh, unaware that it was the truth I'd earned, the kind where identity no longer needs ownership to exist. One afternoon, I noticed a young woman arranging flowers near the fountain. She wiped her eyes while placing carnations. I asked if she was all right. My mom and I fought, she said. She likes everything perfect. I'm tired of disappointing her. I handed her a trowel. Perfection's overrated. Try planting patience instead. She smiled weakly. Does it grow fast? Depends on rainfall, I said. Today looks promising. Watching her dig, I realized I'd become what I used to envy, someone whose pain had turned instructional not cynical. That's the final bloom of forgiveness, when you can hand out hope like spare seeds. As evening settled, I locked the garden gate and stood for a long moment. Crickets tuned their small violins. The smell of damp soil rose like gratitude. I whispered into the air. Thank you, George, for giving me the years to learn what to do with the rest of them. Then I turned toward home. Streetlights flickered on, one by one, soft halos stretching over the walkway, like little blessings accompanying each step. For once, I didn't feel the need to rush. The story wasn't ending. It was composting into every new beginning this ground would ever hold. As I walked home beneath those quiet halos of light, one thought drifted through my mind. Every story we share plants another seed of hope. If this story touched your heart, follow and subscribe to Kindred Echo, where every heartbreak finds its voice and every lesson blooms again.